excuse me for running 10 seconds late. I hereby turn the meeting over to Mr. Siegfried.
Well done.
He's got all the concocted numbers there.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for being here today. The agenda is a little longer today, but I really don't think too much of it will take a lot of time for us to get through. First thing I did want to talk about, and I want to thank you all for your flexibility over the last couple months. Those of you who know me very well, the phrase "we've always done it that way" is the reason we do it. It's not something I usually like, so we tried something different, moved this meeting up earlier in the month. What we found out that maybe there was a reason we've always done it this way in this case, and so we've moved it back to the original date. It just created a pretty tight timeline to have everything ready and be able to know what was going to be on the board that month. So in the interest of making sure that I can share things with you guys and we have a chance to discuss them, we've brought it back to our original date. So so that's kind of that. So again, thanks for your flexibility there. March financials, I'll talk a little bit about those from last month's board meeting. Through the end of February, which at the end of February, we're about 67% through our fiscal year. Our operating budget at that point was at about 64% of our overall expenditures on our budget, so we're tracking where we feel we should be at that point. We do have an increase in expenditures this year of about $14.5 million. Initially, that sounds like a lot of money that we're spending comparatively to the previous year. But a lot of that is our HVAC projects that are going on that is going to be ESSER reimbursable. About $9 million of that is in the HVAC projects. About $2.8 million of that 14.5 is salaries and benefits that has increased. Supplies are costing more this year, just like they are for everybody else. About $800,000 in increases there. Instructional services, we're spending about $475,000 more this year. The largest chunk of that is in special ed, especially probably occupational therapy, some of those things that we're having to contract out much more this year as we've not been able to hire full-time people. So we're still required to provide those services, so we have to contract more of those things out this year. Utilities are up about $275,000 as a whole this year, and then food supplies, again, just like everybody going to the grocery store, our food supplies are up about $250,000 as of the end of February. So that's the downside, that we're spending more. The upside is that our revenue is up comparatively to last year. Our tax revenue at the end of February was up about $6.2 million from fiscal year 22, and our state revenue was up about $2.3 million from fiscal year 22. So again, we're tracking right where we feel like we should be with our budget. We feel like we're going to come in pretty close at the end of the year. And as of our last budget amendment in February, we were going to come in about just adding about $1 million to our reserves at that point. So we've had a couple things that have come up since then. We may not be right at $1 million. We continue to have we've had a lot of issues with water line repairs this year. As you have older buildings, older infrastructure, probably going to continue to see some of those things. So any questions about the financials?
I have a question. The $2.8 million in salary, what is that?
That's the increase in what we're paying salaries for staff this year.
Is that in reference to the stipends, or is that a part of
No,
that or not?
That's just, we're spending more on paying people, our staff. And that's all staff, certified and non-certified.
So when you move everybody over on the salary schedule and down, it costs $1.2 million, and last year they gave a $500 increase to the base salary, which also is $1.6 million with equivalent percent of 1.36 to all certified staff, so that adds up to the $2.8 million. So when you give everybody a step down, and then give them, if they go over from an education standpoint, and then you give everybody a $500 increase to the base salary, which is $500 in the beginning, and it could be as much as $1,100 on the end, across the schedule for all employees, and then 1.36% increase on non-certified staff. That's where the $2.8 million comes from.
Does that include administration?
Yes, includes everybody.
And I kind of lean in a little bit, I'll talk about, we did improve salary schedules for 23-24, we added 1,000 to the base for teachers. We added about 2.65% for staff collectively as a whole. That's going to cost us about $2.9 million for next year. We're doing our best to be competitive with salaries, but we know we also have some work to do. But we felt like the 2.65 increase was a good increase, but obviously we're not even keeping up with inflation at this point. But that's where we felt like we could be and everything. So we also looking to next year a little bit. We did get some good news, and I may have talked about this already. I know I've talked about it in the board meeting. The state is allowing us to go back to pre-pandemic year, one more year. The indication had been that we would have to start using moving forward. They're allowing us to do that one more year for the formula, for the foundation formula, but not allowing us to do it for Classroom Trust Fund and not allowing us to do it for Prop C. Guessing right now, estimating, we think that probably is going to cost us about $1.4 million in funding. That may just depend a little bit on what our final numbers end up this year with student numbers and with attendance, because I think our numbers are going to be better this year than they will in either of the prior two, and we'll be able to use our best year of those three. So, yes.
Are there any attachments?
No, there weren't any attachments. These are already out. The last month's board meeting.
Oh, okay, it's nothing new then, it's
No,
just an
this
update.
is from last month's
Okay.
board meeting. Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what we're talking about, and I'm lost, and I'm just like, if I'm lost, maybe other people are lost.
We're
So I just
rehashing
asked.
last month's board meeting for you.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay, revamping,
yeah,
okay,
because these would have been the financials
perfect,
at the
thank
end of
you.
that. Yeah.
So when you say one more year, is that next year?
Fiscal
We're
year
talking about?
24,
Yeah,
yes.
that's what I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Good.
One thing that Dr. Seegers doesn't know about yet, but that I received information from this morning from the city, there will be a TIF that will be coming off of, let's see, Triumph Foods, that will be a benefit for us from a revenue standpoint, and then also a TIF that will be coming off at the North Shops. And that will be equivalent of about $900,000 more in revenue that we will get from those tax incentives going away. So that's a good thing, and Clint Thompson is supposed to be sending me information, documentation of that. Once he does that, I'll forward that to Robert, and he can share that with you guys next month. But that was something I did find out this morning. That would equate, or at least take care of some of the classroom trust loss.
Yeah, it would help with some of that, definitely.
On that classroom loss, are they ever going to go back some year? Are those bad years gonna catch up with you, or are they added, what's the average? They
Well,
use 3 to 5 years? Or?
Yeah, at some point, I mean, you're allowed to use basically the best of 3 years. At some point, our best year is going to be,
Gonna be down.
yeah, I mean, unless we start to see, we did see a flattening a little bit of our student numbers. Actually, we increased a little bit our student numbers last year to this year at the start of the year, so that's a positive sign. But do I think we'll get back to 11.4? No. So at some point, it is going to be a decrease.
But not till 24, 25?
24, 25, yeah, this one we'll be looking at that. Because I
Probably
really,
won't.
I don't think anybody thought we'd get to use it again this year, but
Right.
I definitely don't think we'll use it be able to for
And it
25.
probably won't show a big negative impact until fiscal year '26.
Yeah, I mean.
Because the balances are in pretty good place, and to be honest with you, assessed valuation has been really good here in Buchanan County the last couple of years. I'm somewhat surprised at those numbers, but if those continue, then that's half your revenue. And so the state dollars won't mean as much if the county dollars continue to come in at the way that they have been.
Yeah, and this is a reassessment year, so Hancock, no matter what CPI is, Hancock limits it to 5% increase. Obviously, from a fiscal standpoint, we would hope it's close to that 5%. But, I've been in contact with the assessor to kind of see what their strategy is, but this has been a pretty busy time of year. They're trying to catch all the people like me who forgot to send their thing in the first time they mailed it to us on personal property and things like that, so. So yeah, so we're looking at those things, following those. Any other questions about the financials?
I have one question I want to make sure about. The formula, you said that that's what they're gonna fund for, or do for one more year.
They'll
You
allow
said-
us, yeah,
But yeah, the what?
they'll allow us to go back and use that pre-pandemic year.
Right, and that was 11.4, did you say? Or, were you talking about the number of students? or-
Yeah, 11,400.
Yeah.
And that's actually,
That was total
Mr. Reader,
numbers,
you
that
do have
wasn't-
to take into consideration that includes summer school numbers as well.
Yeah.
And our summer school number was probably around 300 of that, maybe even close to 400 of that.
So
So
what,
it's included in there too.
okay, so what's the benefit to us is that we're getting to use this higher number
Yes,
of students for funding.
yes.
Yes,
Uh,
which we're in a similar boat with a lot of districts throughout the state. Numbers are down for everybody. That's why, in all honesty, that's why they allowed us to go back and use it one more year. I
Most
think-
schools north of I-70 for sure have been in a decline.
Yeah.
You said two things that didn't fall off. I got Prop C, but what was the other thing?
Classroom trust fund,
The what?
classroom trust
Oh.
fund.
The gambling dollars,
Which one of those are bigger?
props,
Yeah.
way bigger.
All right, well, thanks. Yeah, I wanted to make sure before you went on about that thing.
Next on the agenda, we've got healthcare trust. Talk a little bit about it.
One more question on.
Sure.
Sorry, I apologize.
That's all right.
So when do you finalize the next year's budget? Is that?
In June.
In June?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, by law, we have to pass a budget by June 30th, so we will be bringing a final budget to, board for the June board meeting.
Okay, thank you.
The healthcare trust, just kind of some basics on it. At the end of February, there was a balance of $4.8 million in the healthcare trust. For comparison purposes, it was at $3.8 million at the end of February 22, so that's in good shape. A couple of things I did want to share with you that I didn't have this information even at the last board meeting. I haven't gotten it yet from Lockton, but kind of to take a look at our funding ratios with the healthcare trust. Our total medical prescription is running at a funding ratio of 90%, which is good. So right now, on the year, we have a funding surplus of just slightly over 1 million with that. I will tell you, the stop-loss coverage is a good thing. We've had 8 large claimants over 100,000, and 3 of them actually been over 200,000. So the stop-loss insurance, while expensive, is definitely worth it for us. One of the things we've mentioned in the past, and again, we may have to come back to at some point and discuss a little bit, the EPO plan is by far the most expensive for us. It's running at a ratio of 116% and running at a deficit of about $428,000 for the year. But the PPO and the HSA plans are taking care of that. The PPO is running at 80% with a $629,000 surplus. And the HSA is running at 81% with an $821,000 surplus. So those two really are kind of funding the EPO right now. The other good news we've gotten in the last couple of months is that our insurance rates are not going to increase for next year. That is not in line with the industry standard right now. So that was good news from Lockton. I anticipate that won't be that way next year. But at the same time, like I say, we're in good shape financially with our healthcare trust. Our numbers are solid there.
You know, one thing that I would make note in regards to that is that, that's a thank you to the staff members here that are starting to understand the consumer-driven plans.
Yeah.
The consumer-driven plans were non-existent 6 years ago here in this district, and now they're about 45%. So you can see that the consumer-driven plan is driving this whole thing because it's $865,000 to the good. So, you know, kudos to the staff members for paying attention and listening. And it's not right for everybody, but it is right for probably half of your staff, and half of our staff are almost there. So a big thank you to them.
Yeah, and I think we're doing a good job of helping people understand how to best utilize their benefits, what's an ER visit, what's an urgent care visit, what's a schedule an appointment with your provider. You know, the more we can keep people from unnecessary visits to the ER, absolutely that's beneficial to us, so.
What's the balancing act with that surplus? decrease? I mean.
Yeah, I mean, you have to keep it at a certain point, it's probably a little higher than what it needs to be right now. And I've been trying to talk to Robert about getting some, maybe providing some, childcare for our employees, and he hasn't bid on that yet. But they tell you about 2.5 times is where it needs to be, so it probably is a little bit high. But you have to have it there, I mean.
Better high than low.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, absolutely.
Well, and
But you can start dipping into that for employee benefits and, maybe if you wanted to go provide dental and vision and those types of things. So it will open up opportunities for us as we move forward. What that opportunity is, I don't know.
If you have a bad
But you can't go
experience,
spending it down to 1 million and then have 4 or 5 bad.
But if you have a bad experience year, it could help offset that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what the purpose of it is. Self-insured is, it's a risk.
Well, it may help you avoid a premium increase too, or something.
Right.
And not next year if the work.
And the only reason we've avoided the premium increase is because the employees have become more consumer driven.
yeah,
We were at 8% and now we're at 45% of those employees that are on those plans. That's what's getting it. It has nothing to do with, we are definitely, leading the pack as far as not getting any kind, we haven't had an increase since I've been here.
It's good.
Very good.
Then it sounds like then, why couldn't we even double it up? I mean, why couldn't, if it's such a benefit to be stacked way in our favor for the rainy day or for a catastrophic situation, if it's 4.8 million right now, you said 4.8 million, what would be wrong with it? Shooting for 10 million, I'm at 10 million laying there and roll all the time. So it does get to come back to the employees and the benefits you said that would be there.
Well, it's getting to that-
Childcare would be a big thing.
Yeah, it's getting to that point where you can start looking at those types of things.
So we're gonna keep building that then.
Yeah,
Well,
that's the goal.
So you
let's
know,
be
no
clear,
limit.
it's not really building this year, it's staying stable.
Right.
Let's be clear about that. We're not,
In this fiscal year, it's
this
saying,
fiscal year is
you
staying pretty stable.
just reported it was 3.8 million, and now it's
Right,
over
last
5 million right now.
Last year was
Right.
3.8, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
So
that can vary.
we aren't putting a lid on it then. We can get as big as we can get it then, right? I mean, hope for the best and plan for the
Right.
worst
Right.
is what we should be doing in insurance.
Do we have to, we have 3 plans right now, correct?
We have 3 plans.
Do we need to keep those 3, or is it?
Well, that's,
one where we can
and I think
eliminate
that's part of
one?
the discussion that may have to come up at some point. If we want to keep that EPO plan, we may have to talk about whether that's a viable plan to keep, or if that's a situation that we come back to and say, hey, that benefit or that plan is still available, but as an employee, you may have to pay more to keep that plan.
Yeah,
So that's a conversation we have to have.
That's a good question, Joe, and I would tell you that the EPO plans are not real, there's not very many of them anymore. Most
Yeah,
of your
usually
school districts
within-
go to your PPO and your
Yeah.
HSA, and they just have the 2 options. We've kept it just because there hasn't been a reason not to keep it, but I think if you get to a point where it continues to drive a bigger negative
Right.
balance than what the
Mhm.
balance on the HSA is making it, then you have to look at it.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it was kind of, when we talked a little bit about this, it was kind of a wean people off of an HMO.
Sure.
kind
So the
of-
timing's
it's
probably
the middle ground, but yeah. That's what I say, that's one of those that we're gonna continue to keep an eye on, but at some point, those other 2 plans can't continue to subsidize it completely either, so.
No, yeah, I'd rather have more options than less. And we're gonna watch it for a while. It's running
Yeah.
bad this year, but it could be different next year, right?
Sure, yeah. Any other questions about the healthcare trust? The next item on the agenda is the results of the audit RFP. So the audit RFP went out last month. Board policy, we have to put it out for bid every 3 years. Jenny had put it out, we were not receiving a lot of interest back. She reached out to multiple school districts, found out, hey, who do you have for your auditing? She contacted 6 different companies. None of them responded with a bid. KPM, who was our current auditor, is the only one who did respond with a bid. Which that doesn't sound great off the top. The upside of that is actually, the bid they brought in is actually a little bit less than what we paid this year. So the bid that they have brought in for this year will be $30,740. It does go up a little bit each year to 3, goes to 32.3 the following year, and 33.9 the year after that. So we will be taking the recommendation of the board to use KPM as our auditor for the next 3 years, 3-year contract with them.
Is that one that has to be advertised, or is it just?
It was advertised.
In the
yeah.
paper?
Uh-huh.
Local paper?
Yeah. Yeah, Jenny, I told Jenny she didn't need to come up today. Jenny's got a torn meniscus. I thought I would save her some up and down the stairs today. But I credit to Jenny for, she really went above and beyond. She didn't just say, well, let's see what comes in. Once she saw we weren't getting a lot of smoke, she decided to take the initiative and reach out and try to find some companies. So kudos to her for taking that step.
So,
And-
yeah, so this is, how long have we used these folks before?
Well, they were the last 3-year contract, and I believe they were the one before that too. I think this will be the 3rd time with them.
And does the board have any input on what we look at each year? Or who decides what they look at each year?
That, I
Standard
believe
things
is,
that
that's set by statute, and, yeah, that's.
The one thing we do have.
We have no input then? Somebody else tells us that as well?
It's
What
by
they're gonna audit?
statute, it's what, I mean, it's a standard.
It's a statute, but also, because our budget is over a certain amount of money, we do have to do specialized audits, like special education.
I say they do
We'll get
federal,
audited,
federal
food
money.
service, anything you spend federal dollars on, they rotate.
Single audit, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we have single audits too, through that process.
Kenny, do you have something that you're thinking would be an area of,
I know it's thumbnail, you know, it's not.
and I'm not, I don't mean that like putting you on the spot. Most organizations that I'm in, when you have that, the auditors are actually open to and seek out what are inputs, maybe even concerns. And so I think there is room to do that, and say these are areas that,
Well, they interview every board member and ask them just that question.
Right.
And Kenny has answered that question the last couple of years. Kim had to last
well,
year.
I didn't know that. So I'm just saying that's generally what they do, so you have some opportunity for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions about the audit, Art?
I think that's a pretty good result.
I mean, for having only one bid come back, yeah, I thought it was a good result. You know, usually if you get one bid and it's the same person, that number's probably gonna creep up a little more, so. Again, would we like to have more competition? Sure. But we've been pleased with KPM, and so, you know, looking forward to continuing that partnership with them too, so. Let's see, next item on the agenda, kind of go through the April board agenda. This is still a draft, but I had Donna printed off for me this morning, so trying to pull anything that I think will be a larger purchase that would be something to do. One of the things is the audit, so we just discussed that and talked about that. Phase 1 of the 2023 roof projects, that was part of the approved CIP that we shared the CIP plan for next year with this committee a couple months ago, and then also the board approved that. The roofs that they're looking at this month that they got RFP on were Lake and Bodie, the phase 1 part of that. So they did get 3 different companies bid on those, Roberts Roofing, Housen Metalworks, and Delta Innovative. And the lowest bid that came in on that was Roberts' combined bid of $571,300. Houseman came in at $600,000 and Delta at $910,000. And so the recommendation that Mickey's gonna make next week is to accept the bid from Roberts to do those 2 roofs, to that phase with roofs.
Okay, we're still gonna have a chance to discuss that then.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I guess I wanna go back to that too, because I meant to say that at the beginning when we talked about the meeting dates and times. That's the thing, is Mr. Reeder's in charge of this committee. If there's anything that comes up as a discussion during this, absolutely, he can go back to the board or any of the board members that are here and say, hey, we want that tabled, or we want that pulled, or that always is the discretion of the board to be able to do that. So I want to make that real clear too, that just because it's on the agenda doesn't mean it's locked. You know, there's always that opportunity, so, yeah, absolutely, Mr. Reader, that's something you'll still be able to talk about on Monday. Or next Thursday, I guess, this time.
Right, and, okay. That will be in front of the public, right?
Oh, yeah, it's at the board meeting, yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, can you give me the numbers of those three,
Sure.
please?
Sure. Roberts was 571.3, Hausman was 600, and Delta was 910,000.
Okay, we're good.
And you'll get all of this for the board meeting. I mean, you'll get it a week prior to the board meeting, so. Like I say, we're kind of getting a little sneak peek here, because. Okay?
Thank you.
So that was the roof projects. The other thing that's on there is some playground equipment at Lake, the Early Learning Center. That was something that had been planned when, and DLO's here, and she could talk to this a little bit too possibly. When ESSER money was budgeted, this was one of the things that is an allowable ESSER cost with early childhood and was budgeted at that time. That bid opening, there was only one company that responded on that, and that was Cunningham, and their bid is $139,999.37. So we are seeing that with playgrounds right now. There are not a lot of companies who are bidding. It's becoming a pretty specialized with some of your all-access playground equipment, things like that, so. I don't know, if there are questions about that, like I say, DLO is here, and she.
Is that the structure or is that the resilient material? as
So
well?
it's the structure, so basically, we'll be keeping the swings that are there, and we had a little bit of money previously to add like some side things, so that's why it's not as much as the Mark Twain. But the actual structure that's there currently is ages 2 to 12, and so we were able to keep it to open, but the height is not the recommended height for falling in the surface. So we are putting in a new surface closer to the building, a new place, sort of that one will be gone. So that's why it's less than the other one.
Hey Robert, I had a question yesterday too, you might just make note of this to ask Mickey, but I think skates is in pretty bad shape, and I know that we rotate those every 2 or 3 years. I'd just like to find out where skate is in the mix. Hopefully it's pretty close, if not, we might need to.
Is that Edison up?
Edison is
Edison,
it's
That's the
Edison.
deal this summer, yeah.
We're like, fine. Well, because I was always like,
Yeah, we're like, it's coming up!
That was pretty
Oh,
popular
they're getting like
for
a
while.
second one too.
yeah, they are, they're gonna really miss it.
When do you admit that happened?
But yeah, I'll check with Mickey and see.
Yeah, just find out where skates are.
I'm
I
just
know we
seeing-
have that rotation
Yeah, I'll
schedule.
see what the rotation is.
Hopefully it's close, if not, we might need to revisit that.
Those are the only things really on the action items. 2 things I will mention that are not necessarily, there are things that are a little more expensive, but not under the $50,000. We're renewing our contract with IMS. They're the company that's been doing our scanning. We are putting all of our records, scanning them digitally, putting them into the cloud. The renewal of that cloud and scanning contract is up. And so we do want to stay with them. We did a sole source or a proprietary with them. We don't want to switch our cloud at this point and try to figure out how to move all those documents over. And so that will be on the agenda.
Was that amount still 12.5, Robert? Did that go down?
No, it's 49,000 a year for the cloud, and then it's going to be per item on scanning.
Oh, no, I was talking about the scanning part.
Yeah, we've got to where we
It's a
don't
lot
have a
cheaper,
lot of
right?
scanning left, yeah. We're going more to a per item because really we got all the years and years of the stuff that was in the warehouse. And I mean, it was a lot of stuff in the warehouse. We're finishing up right now with some stuff in HR and the business office, and then really the amount of scanning will be pretty minimal within a couple of months here. A lot of those items, those records we'll scan in ourselves as we do it. Truthfully, we probably have rolled the dice for a long, long time with our records. You know, being in a hard copy and stored in a warehouse that we didn't have a fire or flood or tornado or something like that. So this really is a much more secure way to make sure that we have our records protected, so.
Were you saying that it was a sole source when you originally did it, or you're saying
No,
it's
it was
sole
an
source?
RFP then.
So now it's a sole source because,
because we want to maintain it with that cloud, yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
We're doing ELD right now also.
Yeah, so that's what I say, we're working through those records, but really the bulk we completed within that first 3 years. And so, yeah, the first couple of months, I think it was a little overwhelming because there were pallets and pallets and pallets of boxes in the warehouse. And so we freed up all that space on top of that too, so.
This is records of everything, financial stuff and even student stuff over
Yeah.
the years.
Yeah,
All the stuff that we're legally
That's what-
supposed to keep,
yeah.
Mhm.
even the record.
Every single thing that came across
1892.
is all on the records.
Yeah, everything that has been stored all that time, yeah.
I was just wondering, some of that stuff, statute of limitations and stuff, so.
Some of it does, it just depends on what it is.
Yeah,
Some
it
of
just
it doesn't.
We could go back and probably find your transcript, Mr. Reader.
Sorry.
It's easy, fine, it's at the bottom there.
We could go back and find out your class ranks.
I got beat out from the bottom by 3 people. But we did have a class of over, almost 400, so I did well.
The other thing, 2 other things are on there, the approval of the annual SRO payment to the police department, it's a contract amount. It's not really anything to negotiate necessarily as the payment comes due, but it is a larger amount, but just wanted you to be aware of that. And then the last thing, we
How
are
much is
purchasing,
that?
I do not know that off the top of my head.
Did we ever get fully staffed this year, Robert, on that?
No.
We did, were we short 1 or 2?
Mr. Nolte, what are we short?
We're short 3.
3?
We'd like to have 9 and we have 6.
So the bill would even be bigger if we were fully staffed.
Yeah.
Well,
Way bigger.
it's an agreement that it's 50, it's a 50/50
It's a
split.
50/50 split.
So the city pays 50%, we pay 50%, so yes.
So we
If
would
we
have
added 3 more, it would be larger,
be 50% more.
50% more.
But you don't know the numbers?
I don't have that in front of me right now, no.
Oh, I should-
How many do we have there now?
6.
6.
Okay, 6, I didn't know.
But that will be on the board agenda before.
I can get that number, just give me a second.
That's all right.
And then the other thing, that's still under 50,000, but is a little bit more expensive, is furniture that's being purchased for the enrollment center. We are trying to create a good face for people that come to the community, their first interaction with the community, so we've created the enrollment center downstairs. A lot of work's gone into that, and Mr. Nolte and DLO, and I think Larry's been involved with that a little bit too, and so that furniture purchase, some of that is on there this month too, so not above the 50,000 threshold, but I just want to make you aware that that's on there. And that really is pretty much it for the board agenda this month, so.
That number was $326,996.
And that's our amount that we.
That's our half, yes.
What you want us to talk about, Sassy?
Is that for 6 officers or is the budget at 9?
That's for the 6 that we
That's
have.
just for 6, okay.
I don't know what it is.
It's our contract
So,
for
so you want that? They're making $100,000 a year.
Uh-uh.
No.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
What's that, with all their salary and benefits, they are making that.
Well, they are now, I mean, they're making over 100 now, but, I mean, because if you do, it'd be divided by 6, but then you got, their salary would double because the city's paying the other half, so. So that's, what, 300,
But that would include,
55.
that would include their, some expense for their car and the other things, and equipment, and things that they have.
Is that actual salary or is that salary and benefit?
that's a benefit as well.
Total cost, I assume.
So if you're just a policeman, then you just get half the
I
salary.
have a request
It's
of
a
you.
$100,000 contract.
When this is presented at our next meeting, would you please remind the community the purpose of the plate equipment?
Oh, sure.
There seems to be an idea that it's totally unnecessary money spent.
Okay, yeah. I'd be
So
happy
it
to.
would be nice to hear again the importance and value of that.
Of course. I'd be happy to do that. And how it's funded.
Thanks.
That, I believe, is all that will be on the agenda that probably we'll talk about. So, any questions about anything that's on the agenda, really, or anything?
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Back in the January meeting, we talked to Peter, and he was gonna do some grants, and the expiration is tomorrow. Has that been completed?
We didn't get them.
We did not get
No.
that.
I laugh a little bit because what we got back was we were discouraged from proceeding further. And they give like one of three things, and it was interesting. They listed the strengths of our proposal and they listed the weaknesses of our proposal. And one of the things that they listed as a strength, they also listed as a weakness. I think it's 80 million went out in this round, and there was over, I believe, 400 million requested nationwide. So yeah, it was pretty competitive. So that's something we'll continue to look at with them as opportunities come up. Again, this is the first round. This is a 5-year. Maybe we'll get some more insight. We didn't feel like we got very good feedback on that. When you tell me something's a strength and something's a weakness, I'm not sure how you utilize that feedback.
Sure.
But they're working with also a district in Kansas. They also did that, and they got the same thing back that we did. So we'll continue to try to figure out what, they'll reach out to people that did get this first round. Hey, what did you have included? What are the things that were, they said were strengths of yours? And then we'll try to tailor that for the next round. But yeah, we were not encouraged to move further, I think was the nice way they said it.
I remember they said they had 5 times to apply, so they're not gonna stop.
It's a 5 years, and yeah, they're spreading it out over the 5 years. But obviously, the demand was there more than what their supply was this first year, so.
Yeah. My second question was just for clarification purposes. I know what the expectation was set for anything above $50,000 would come through the finance committee, and hopefully the committee is, we have a purpose to help the board. Not all the board members can be here, and sometimes their agendas have 30 things on it, and they can't dissect every item right there at the table. So I think the purpose of the committees is to help the board dissect some of those items and get some of the questions answered, and encourage different attachments, and to have it written, we followed this policy, we went through the finance on this date, here was the discussion or whatever. So I know that isn't always followed, policy isn't always followed, and the 50, let me finish, I know you're stuck in there, you wanna respond, hold on. $50,000 was the recommendation that Gabe gave, and that was kind of the standard that he gave, and it's been several times redirected to make sure that was the standard, and that's not been followed. And even in the March 7th email, when I asked specifically about the Mark Twain playground equipment, it was only to kind of get a feel if it was an FY23 or FY24 budget. And I specifically asked if it was an action item, which it wasn't, and then ended up being on as an action item. So it's those kind of things that raises the concerns of the public is, was this necessary? Did we get the Cadillac version of the playground equipment? Why was this rushed through? Why was it not gone through finance? And one of the things I think we need to do is stay consistent, because consistency creates trust. And when we are inconsistent, it makes people, it just creates suspicion, and that's what we need to not do.
Okay. I'll say this, the $50,000, that's not written in policy anywhere. That is a practice we've tried to follow, and I've done my best to do that. And one of the reasons we moved this meeting back was last month. That window was tight, and the day that we said, hey, there's really not anything on the agenda, there wasn't anything at that time, and the meeting was the next day.
Well, there's always gonna be timing issues that prevent
Yeah.
things from going to committee. I think ultimately it's gonna be the board's responsibility, it's not the committee's responsibility, it's the board's responsibility to review and approve information. I see that packets go out prior to board meetings, and we have the opportunity to ask questions, and if we have questions of the committee and committee members, we can go to them. But ultimately, timing happens.
Sure. And that's why we moved this back. We really try to minimize that as much as possible, so.
Good.
All right, anything else? All right, our next meeting is May 18th, 2 o'clock. So, Mr. Reader, anything else from you? Would you like to adjourn?
We can adjourn if you'd like.
Okay. All right, we're adjourned. All right, thank you all for being here today.